the Obama administration is adamant about ousting Bashar al-Assad, and in today's video, we're going to break it down for you how all of this is being done. Like Bush did with Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Obama made things worse by overthrowing Gaddafi in Libya, and now an attempt on Assad in Syria. Of course, this isn't a Democratic or Republican problem, but it's a part of a broader agenda to remake the Middle East for the benefit of Israel. This is why it's still full steam ahead in Syria, despite the consequences. And what are the consequences? Well, arming, training, and funding, basically building up from scratch the Islamic State. As early as 2013, the Defense Intelligence Agency and Joint Chiefs of Staff were warning that overthrowing Assad was going to lead to chaos and a takeover of Syria by these jihadist extremists, just like what was happening in Libya. But by 2013, the CIA, Saudi Arabia, and the UK were shipping weapons from Libya through Turkey into Syria in order to overthrow Assad. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, director of the DIA between 2012 and 2014, warned the Obama administration that toppling Assad was going to be big trouble. The so-called Free Syrian Army were not a group of moderate fighters. They were extremists, and the U.S. was arming them. Flynn said, if the American public saw the intelligence that we were producing daily at the most sensitive level, they would go ballistic. We understood ISIS's long-term strategy and its campaign plans, and we also discussed the fact that Turkey was looking the other way when it came to the growth of the Islamic State inside Syria. But the Obama administration just pushed back. They just did not want to hear it. But even the Joint Chiefs believed that Assad shouldn't be replaced by fundamentalists. So they started passing along intelligence to the militaries of other countries without going through any of the proper channels, that is, behind the Obama administration's back. The Joint Chiefs hoped that their intelligence would make it to the Syrian army so that they could use it against the real enemy, the Islamic State. So, without Obama's knowledge, the Joint Chiefs shared information with Germany, Israel, and Russia, who were all concerned about their borders if the Islamic State grew more powerful. So in this way, Germany, Israel, and Russia coordinated with the Syrian army, providing information on the whereabouts and the intent of radical jihadist groups. There was no direct contact between the U.S. and the Syrian military. Ever since the Bush years, Syria has been a target of the United States. A 2006 report by William Roebuck, then in charge of the U.S. Embassy in Damascus, recommended that the U.S. work with Saudi Arabia and Egypt to destabilize Syria. He encouraged an isolation of Syria through the support of the National Salvation Front, which is led by the former Syrian vice president, who had the backing of the Saudis and the Muslim Brotherhood. By July 2013, the Joint Chiefs found a much more direct way to undermine Obama's Syrian policy. They approached the CIA, who were supplying weapons to the Syrian opposition from Libya via Turkey, and convinced them of a better plan. Arm ISIS and the Syrian opposition with weapons from Turkish arsenals that could then reach the Syrian rebels within days, instead of the weapons from Libya. The cost-effective solution saw the Turks and the CIA now shipping old Soviet weapons and M1 carbines that hadn't been used since the Korean War to the Syrian opposition. The downgrading of the quality of weapons and the flow of U.S. intelligence to the Syrian army came at a critical time in the war. The extremists had taken over the provincial capital of Raqqa, and Syrian Air Force raids weren't successful at stopping the advance. And to make matters worse, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey escalated their financing and their arming of the Islamic State. In the early weeks of 2014, ISIS took complete control of Raqqa and areas around it. And while Assad still controlled 80% of the Syrian population, he had lost a vast amount of territory. The CIA's efforts to train moderate rebels was also failing, just as it had happened during the Iraq War. People would show up for the weapons and the training and then just disappear into the desert, likely defecting to ISIS. And the CIA attempted to persuade the Saudis to stop supporting ISIS, but these efforts failed. After a secret meeting in Washington, the Saudis went back home and increased their efforts, and they asked for more support from the U.S., which the U.S. agreed to. Meanwhile, the Obama administration has been condemning Russia for its support of Assad, despite Russia's success with combating ISIS. Russia knows the ISIS leadership, the Joint Chiefs Advisor said, and has insights into its operational techniques and has much intelligence to share. The Middle East is Russia's backyard. In the same way that Americans wouldn't tolerate a jihad in Latin America, Putin doesn't want to see this chaos spread to Jordan or Lebanon. I think Putin blames himself for Gaddafi's death, for not playing a strong role behind the scenes. He's committed now to ensuring that Assad doesn't suffer the same fate. Now, Turkey, on the other hand, is obviously not happy with Russia's involvement. The Russians have been jamming their radar and flying over their airspace in order to fight ISIS. And so on November 24th, Turkey acted, and they shot down a Russian jet. Obama supported Erdogan and Turkey while blatantly lying to the American people that the Russians are targeting moderate opposition groups and are leaving ISIS alone, which is a total lie. It's just propaganda by the corporate state media. But there is opposition in the ranks of the U.S. military. The Joint Chiefs and the DIA dismiss Obama's musings, and they agree with the Kremlin. And despite the reality right before their very eyes, the Obama administration is still adamant about the four tenets of their policy: that Assad must go, that a coalition with Russia is impossible, that Turkey is an ally, and that there are moderate opposition forces for the U.S. to support. Meanwhile, the Joint Chiefs see Turkey as a major problem, not a steadfast ally. And the Europeans, especially after the Friday the 13th Paris attacks, are more open to a united coalition with Russia against ISIS, which Obama has repeatedly said no to. Folks, there is much more to this than what I've presented here, but this outline expresses why the Obama administration is the real enemy, or rather, the forces behind Obama that are pulling the strings. But here is what could be the beginnings of a complete breakdown of the U.S. order. Remember that one of the major factors in the collapse of the Soviet Union was when the Red Army refused to follow orders. With this situation in Syria, we have the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Joint Chiefs of Staff undermining what the Obama administration wants done. Or at least we had this situation. General Michael Flynn was axed by the White House for telling the truth about Syria, but firing him certainly didn't shut him up. Recently, Flynn told the German media that we have to work constructively with Russia. Whether we like it or not, Russia made a decision to be there and to act militarily. They are there, and this has dramatically changed the dynamic. So you can't say Russia is bad and they have to go home. It's not going to happen. Get real. But of course, nobody in the Obama administration or even Congress will accept this. And now the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs is not as friendly to Assad as Martin Dempsey was. At a Senate Armed Services Committee, General Joseph Dunford said, "If you want to talk about a nation that could pose an existential threat to the United States, I'd have to point to Russia," adding that America must work with Turkey and do all we can to help the Syrian moderate opposition forces. So it's unbelievable. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in, as Justin Trudeau pulls out Harper's CF-18s and he replaces them with ground troops to train Not Assad's army in the battle against ISIS, but the supposed moderate opposition forces. Trudeau told reporters that this will not be a short engagement. He called it a humanitarian crisis, as if it were some natural occurrence in an area that has been unstable and insecure for a very long time. But it's not a humanitarian crisis. It's the beginnings of World War III, and we really have the banker puppet politicians to thank for it. Dissent in the U.S. military is being dealt with as unrealistic demands on Russia are compromising any effective collective action against ISIS. But of course, ISIS has been armed, trained, and funded by the West, and that policy isn't going to come to an end anytime soon. It's Orwellian doublespeak. Justin Trudeau wants Canadian forces in Iraq training these so-called moderates to fight against ISIS. But like Putin said in this speech on October 22nd, there's no need to play with words and split terrorists into moderate and not moderate. Ladies and gentlemen, the real enemy here is the Western imperialist military-industrial complex. They started this mess. They have been escalating it, and they've been blatantly lying to the public about what's actually going on. And the truth of the matter is, Justin Trudeau's plans is going to help ISIS, not hurt them. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, be sure to fact-check this video by checking all the sources in the description below. And you can always use the search feature on my website here. Just type in any word and see what we have to say about that. And be sure to check out the PFT shop this Christmas. And if you feel so kind as to want to donate to the work that we're doing here at Press for Truth, you can do so here. And of course, you can always join us as a member at Press for Truth, or you can become a PFT patron, because without any of you, we simply just wouldn't exist. So thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more video reports coming soon to pressfortruth.ca.